Okay, and we are now live on channel 18.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Stockard. I'm the current president of the Orleans Citizens Forum, which is sponsoring this evening's forum on the topic of Orleans Community Center. Imagine all it can be. We welcome everyone here. And as a reminder, the Orleans Citizens Forum is a nonprofit, nonpartisan volunteer organization dedicated to providing Orleans citizens with information on issues important and vital to them and the community. We are self-supporting through our own member contributions. For our current members who have renewed their support for this year, we thank you. For past members who have not yet sent in their renewed notice, we encourage you to do so. And for those of you who are not members and wish to be, or just wish to make a one-time donation to us, please go to our website, orleanscitizensforum.org, to learn how you may contribute. Despite the limitations imposed on us by COVID 19 this year, we are pleased that we are able to continue our mission of providing these special forums to you. Once again, we are grateful to the town of Orleans, Channel 18, and especially Sarah Eaton for her technical assistance in making this remote forum possible. We're also very grateful to all of our panelists today for taking the time out of their very busy schedules to participate in today's forum. And with that, I will turn it over to our board member, Maxine Minkoff, who will introduce our panelists and moderate today's forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us at the forum. You're going to be hearing from 4 individuals who have been active community members in Orleans and in one case in Harwich, and who have frequently reached out to citizens in order to gain their perspectives and to learn about their needs. So I want to introduce the panelists to you. Our first panelist is Kevin Galligan. Kevin's been an active part of Orleans community since 1985 and has served on numerous committees and boards. Currently, he is the Orleans Select Board Chair, and tonight he'll be giving us some background regarding the history of recreation and community space in the town. Following Kevin will be Carolyn Carey. Carolyn is the director of the Harwich Community Center and has been since it opened 20 years ago. Carolyn will share the lessons she's learned over her 20 years and give us a sense of what Harwich's center offers the Harwich community. Next up is Tracy Murphy. And Tracy is the chair of the Orleans Recreation Committee, Advisory Committee, and is the secretary of Orleans Elementary School Parent-Teacher Committee. She's lived in Orleans for 15 years, is the mother of 3 children, and she'll speak both as the chair of the Recreation Committee and as a mother, sharing her perspective on the need for a center and her thoughts about what it could be. Last panelist is Kyle Wibbey, who's the vice chair of the Recreation Advisory Committee. He's also the chair of NOSIT Together We Can, an after-school program for middle schoolers, and Kyle manages the Finch Skate Park. Oh. A father of 3, he's lived in Orleans for 7 years. And Kyle will share some of the work of the Recreation Committee, including data collected regarding what community members have identified as recreational needs, what data still needs to be collected, and what programs are presently offered in town. Kyle will also talk about future possibilities and the long road ahead. So those are our panelists, but we've also reached out to Judy Wilson, and who is the director of the Orleans Senior Center, and Joanna Keeley, who's a member of the Old Orleans Firehouse and the Community Building Renovation Committee. Judy and Joanna are in our Zoom and ready to respond to questions that arise concerning their facilities and programs during the question answer period. So each panelist will have about 10 minutes to speak so that there's time for questions and answers from the audience. If you are in the Zoom meeting, and there are many attendees, it's wonderful to see, you can raise your hand electronically and I will acknowledge you. And you'll be unmuted and you can ask the question. If you're watching via channel 18, questions can be emailed to info@orleanscitizensforum.org at any time during the forum. And with that, I will turn things over to Kevin.
Thanks so much, Maxine. And thanks for including me in this forum. And thanks for the work you've done coordinating all of us so that this is a really smooth delivery and well coordinated. And hopefully people will really get a lot out of it. So as the title of this is, Imagine All That Could Be relative to our Community Center for Orleans, I'd really just ask that we just take some time and through the conversation we're going to have today, look at the experiences that we've had to date. And I do go back a few years, as you noted, in Orleans, to remember the juice bar. Some people will remember that. You already mentioned the Finch Skateboard Park, which was a generous donor gift. And as Kyle can attest, is expanded beyond belief. You go by there, Eldridge Parkway, you can see incredible activity and youth enjoying not only the existing, but now the new ramp system. Also, as you'll hear from Kyle and Katie, Tracy rather, the rec committee has done an incredible job building on enrollment in our programs. As you mentioned, our COA, even in normal times, Judy has said that they have a space problem. They are maxed out because of such high participation in their programs and events. I do hope that today folks think about our current and future needs for people of all ages, all abilities, and all interests. Let's try to put aside, just for the moment today, any bias that we have to instantly worry about, how are we going to pay for all this? Let's just enjoy some conversation and ideas that we can share, because I think if we think about what it could be like for young families to know their kids can go to a local rec center, think about more opportunities for us as older people to be part of that experience too, it really could be making Orleans even more of a special place for all. As you mentioned, Joanna Keeley and many folks from the Community Building Renovation Task Force, also the old Firehouse we call it, have been working hard on a task and charge that the Orleans Selectmen gave them, and I've been fortunate to be their liaison. And let me tell you, after just their first few meetings, we clearly know the community needs far more than the current resources of this little building can provide. We also know from Snow Library, they are maxed out. We also know from the senior center, as mentioned before, in normal times, they are maxed out. So let me just share some of the many uses that I think we could put out there and think about as we go down this conversation and this road, just in terms of possibilities. More remote learning, more tutoring space that couples with and partners with the Snow Library or elementary and middle schools, which are really in a nice proximity to each other. More events and workshops. We know this incredible success of the Snow Library Lifetime Learning Series. So much more can be done beyond that. These partnerships can form win-wins with both businesses, nonprofits, the schools, and even other community centers beyond our borders. And that's to expand the repertoire of services that could include rental of the facilities that bring in revenue, and also make us think about, if those are the things we want to consider, how we might design a space. So you're thinking about gig speed internet, media equipment, kitchen catering, if that wants to be a possibility. So these are just some of the things that were racking around in my brain. I just wanted to put out there more as ideas. I do think from a concrete, what has been done and can be done, when Carolyn Carey from Harwich Community Center speaks of her tremendous asset in Harwich, let's be sure that we also include learning from our neighbors like Harwich, but Yarmouth, Wellfleet, and others, because they've tackled this issue as well with really good results. I know the Progress, the Cultural Center of Cape Cod, which formed a nonprofit, they rescued and repurposed the old Bass River Savings Bank in Yarmouth. Also, we know Wellfleet Preservation Hall. I've gone to concerts, enjoyed events there. And again, their motto is, quote, celebrating arts, culture, and community. And they are doing it even through COVID. Also, let's be inclusive, as I mentioned before, as we go down this path, to not only consider the needs of all, but to also do it in coordination with future needs. We know the Snow Library is working on, and should funding come from the state, an expansion or renovation of that building. We also know the Senior Center needs to expand its services to accommodate all the needs that exist. But if we do it the way we're thinking today, we do it in a comprehensive, integrative way, I believe this conversation and coordination really will lead to an efficient use of funds and provide us a roadmap for efficient use of our capital expenditures. And finally, since I did mention capital and dollars, let me wrap up with how the typical process from the town and select board follows when we look at capital improvements. Typically involves 3 steps: a feasibility study that is first focused on framing out the concepts and considering some sites, what possible options could be that would involve more community input. The next step, if that's successful, would be to go into a design stage that would ultimately, if successful and approved by the town meeting, would fund the construction and start of operations, programs, and services. So I think now is a perfect time to think about that feasibility study that didn't go so well our past fall town meeting at Nauset Beach. But I think in an orderly way, thinking this through, we might be able to plan for a warrant article for this spring. Indeed, it's really an exciting time for Orleans with the sewer infrastructure being installed, housing efforts are moving forward. I really am so pleased to be part of this conversation as we imagine all that can be for an Orleans community center. And I'm really pleased to now turn it over to Carolyn Carey, Director of the Harwich Community Center. Carolyn, the floor is yours.
Oh, why, thank you. That's a tough act to follow. No one told me I was going to have to go after Kevin. Oh, no. I really want to thank you for the opportunity. Unfortunately for all of you, you have asked me to speak on a topic that is so near and dear to me. I promise to try and keep it to 10 minutes. However, anyone who wants to talk about this further, I will give you my home phone number. Feel free to call me. I do mean sincerely. I have been very, very fortunate. Please don't tell my bosses, but I have the best job on Cape Cod. Running this community center has been such a wonderful opportunity. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we have here and what we do and what we're looking for. I'm going to tell you some of the things we'd like to change. And then hopefully you will feel about community centers just like I do. Okay, maybe not, but we'll get you there. So here in Harwich, we have a 32,000 square foot building. We, on February 5th, will turn 21 years old. So it's an exciting time. We have, and we're still learning and growing every day. When the building was first passed, it failed the first time and won by 10 votes the second time. So I think it's important that you know, it is important for the public to have all the information. That being said, if it was ever to be put out to a vote now, I think it would overwhelmingly pass. And I can say that because I have the statistics of how many people come through our doors. For years, I was just guesstimating for the Board of Selectmen when I would give my reports into the public, till we decided that we would put in door counters, which actually counts the people coming in and out. The numbers are staggering. We'll get to that. So here's what we have here. We have the Council on Aging, and we have the Youth and Recreation. In addition, we have our local access TV station, Channel 18. We also have the Veterans Affairs Office located in this building. We have the town nurse, and we have our cemetery department here. In addition to that, we work with Elder Services and have Meals on Wheels that rent space in our building. Other than that, we have approximately 172, I think is the exact number, of groups and organizations or one-time users who utilize the space. We do things from smaller events to larger events. Our building is set up with a large gym. We have a multi-purpose room. It can be divided into 3 smaller rooms. We have a commercial kitchen, which is very popular. We have a child's playroom. We have a gym. We have a game room. We have 5 activity rooms, which are the rooms that clubs and organizations are meeting in. In addition to that, we have 2 small counseling rooms. And we have an unfinished basement, which is 17,000 square feet. So I'm trying to give you all the information. I know I told you I'm talking so fast. I apologize. We have a lot of multi-generational programs that we do here in our building. We're doing educational programs, computer literacy. We do a lot of STEM programs. We do a Girl Power program, which is with the youth and the seniors of our town or the older adults. We have some town-wide events. We have our town meetings here in this building. We have our elections. We have our after prom events. We have individuals coming over from all of different committees. Our town band meets here. That is just a few of the things that we have. So I've put together some of the information for one of our reports. My budget is made up of all of the things inside the building. So I listed the 5 other departments. Of those 5 departments, I pay the bills for the community center. So approximately 74% is on gas and water and electricity. And then the other portion of my the budget is for things like the telephone system, equipment, the grounds, repairs. So approximately 94% of the community center budget is for shared services for 5 different departments. It's important to keep in mind, so when you see those numbers that you don't get scared right away. And one of the reasons that we decided to do a community center in Harwich was because the youth and recreation department had outgrown their space. And at the same time, our council on aging had outgrown their space. Both were actually operating out of small homes that are still part of the town's buildings that we have, but they had just outgrown their space. Certainly, I'm sure that happens in Orleans as well. So we were looking at 2 separate buildings, and then somebody, his name is Lee Culver, came up with an idea of what if we just had one large building where we could share space and give opportunities to do things together, multi-generational. So there was a whole campaign, and I think it worked because we're here 21 years later. So Lee Culver actually just passed away last year, and we were sad to say, but it was such a tribute. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because I received so many sympathy cards here. And although he is a dear friend of mine, I thought, wow, they must not have his family's address. I'll just forward these. And then I got the sympathy cards back, and they were really meant for the building. There was such a sense of loss. So I point that out because you never know what a building is going to be to someone. Whether it was what it was that they saw Lee as an important part of it, or they saw it as an extension of their own family. So those are just some of the stories. If you'll indulge me for just 1 minute, I promise to be fast. I am going to read to you, we are open, I'm sorry, during COVID times, but we are under some restrictions. But I went back to a year ago, a little over a year ago. So when we were in full operation. So if you I'll go quick. Al-Anon, Alzheimer's and the Dementia Caregiver Support, Best One BNI, Betty Brady's Foot Care, Bit of Bliss Yoga, Blood Drive for Cape Cod, the Cape and Islands Rowing Association, Cape and Island Business Referral, Cape Cod Senior Softball, Cape Cod Ukulele Club, Community Center Orchestra, the Cape Sands Ballroom Orchestra, the Chatham Harwich Newcomers Ping Pong, Chatham Harwich Newcomers Anything But Bridge, Chatham Harwich Newcomers cornhole, the regular meeting of the Chatham Harwich Association, the balance boosters from COA, the COA big screen movie, the COA board meetings, the COA brown bag program, COA cribbage, COA device advice, COA Friends of Harwich COA Girl Power, COA Harwich hearing screenings, COA Health for Life, COA Homeless Prevented, COA Legal Appointments, COA Mahjong, COA Men's Book Club, COA Men's Breakfast, COA Mobile Dental Clinic, the COA Pedicure, COA Poetry Reading, COA Shine, Senior Luncheon Program for COA, the COA Sight Loss Services, COA Supper Club, COA Tai Chi classes, COA Ukulele classes, COA Women's Breakfast, Compassionate Friends, the Country Meadow Condos, Cranberry Rug Hookers, Dad's Talk, Harwich Artists, Harwich Bikeways Committee, Harwich Garden Club, Harwich Realtors, Harwich Town Band, Insight Meditation, KD Quilters, Kiwanis Club, Lower Cape Community Housing, the Machine Embroidery Group, the Master Gardeners, Monomoy Early Childhood Council, Narcotics Anonymous, Nutrition and Diet Management, Overeaters Anonymous, Painters Group, Play Group, Quilt Bag, Rec Adult Tennis, Recreation Homework Center, the Men's 55 Basketball, After School Programs, there are several of those, the Movie and Homework Club, the Open Gym, Senior Volleyball, Sound Dune Swing Band, the Spalding PD Wellness, Super Fit and Senior Fit, We Can Corporation, the Wednesday Stitchers, Wicked Fun Games, the Women's Club, the Women's Club Book Group, the Winter Group, Yoga, and Zumba. I've just taken you through 1 week at the community center. So I will stop there, and I apologize, but I just thought if you could just, it's so hard to tell you what goes on, but as you can see, there were every different age group in there, and it's a great place, and I really wanted to be able to give you some information, whatever you decide on. I wish you great success, and you're expanding the vision and exploring all your possibilities, and there can be nothing wrong with that. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Tracy, who I'm sure will be much more eloquent than I ever could be.
Thank you, Carolyn. I don't know if I'll match. I certainly don't have a list like that, but it's exciting. It's just so exciting to hear Carolyn talk about what's going on in Harwich and to even begin to think about what we can do in Orleans. So thank you so much. As Maxine said earlier, my name is Tracy Murphy. I'm the chair of the Orleans Recreation Advisory Committee, and I'm also an Orleans parent. I have 3 kids in elementary and middle school, and I'm grateful to the Orleans Citizens Forum for being here tonight and having the chance to continue this conversation. As I said, it's so exciting and inspiring to listen to Carolyn talk about everything the Harwich Community Center has brought to residents and visitors of Harwich. My family and I have been those visitors over the years, participating in preschool playgroups with Miss Lucy and recreation basketball and soccer games at Harwich Community Center. We've also been to the Cultural Center in Harwich for more basketball and artist studio visits, and to the Chatham Community Center for rec games. We've done capoeira classes at Wellfleet Preservation Hall and participated in their Martin Luther King Day walking event for years. So it's been interesting, this process, to stop to think about how much enjoyment we've had from other towns' community centers and what a wonderful sense of community we've derived from those visits, even as visitors. So I just think this is such an opportunity for us to look around and see what Orleans can learn from our neighbors. My sons, inspired by those visits, no doubt, have spent many rainy, cold Cape Cod March and April Saturday mornings scrolling the internet or asking for Google search terms in the hope of finding a gym where they can run around and play. Never with any luck. They have been lucky enough to participate in programs in Orleans that have made use of the school gyms, but the logistical challenges of running those sorts of programs have made those occasions rare. In fact, the Recreation Advisory Committee was reestablished 2 years ago because parents of Orleans kids were interested in gaining some sort of regular open gym access. We had kids who wanted to play and parents who were willing to supervise them, but nowhere to go. And that experience really helped me recognize the ways in which something as simple as open gym provides benefits far beyond the initial goal of just giving kids a place to play. It's a chance for parents to come together and grandparents to come together to play with kids or give kids a chance to run a game on their own. And that conversation around open gym eventually broadened to include the wish for more robust programming opportunities for all ages and interests, and a more active and dynamic recreation department to oversee it. The select board heard our concerns, and our committee's work commenced in June of 2019. So among the first things we did was survey the town to get a sense of things that people liked with the department's offerings, things that needed work, and where people wanted us to focus our energy. And in response to those survey results, we did put together proposals for a lot of outside projects, including pickleball courts, a storybook trail, new bike racks, a lighted basketball court, kayak racks, and new trail signage. And those are all really exciting projects, and we're hoping that they encourage Orleans visitors and residents to get outside more. But the indoor wishes that came up on the survey were things like a community center, which was far and away the most popular project listed on the survey. They also included things like open gym, yoga classes, arts and crafts opportunities, and more childcare, longer childcare hours during the summer, and more childcare after school hours the rest of the year. And these are things that we just don't have the space to offer right now. So even though RAC started with the wish for open gym time, it wasn't offered last year. There are no plans to offer it post-pandemic because of the space. And our ability to expand offerings is really limited. And this is where the Imagine part of the forum's title comes into play, because we're really asking the people here tonight and the people who hopefully watch this and catch up in the days and weeks ahead to imagine, if we had that space, what we could do with it. And one thing that I imagine happening at an Orleans community center are multi-generational classes, perhaps modeled on the after-school enrichment program at Orleans Elementary School that I've been a part of. When I joined the Orleans PTC Parent-Teacher Committee 6 years ago, the committee was running after-school classes for kids in a wide range of subjects, and some were taught by teachers from within the school, some were taught by parents or grandparents, and some were community members. And the classes met once weekly for a 6-week stretch twice a year. And the program just grew and grew and grew. And the need was really clear that most working parents needed childcare that stretched longer than the school day. And kids really craved the opportunity to try something new in a familiar setting. So parents and teachers and grandparents, as I said, really stepped up to the plate. They offered classes including, and this is not a list as wide-ranging as Carolyn's, but bear with me, it was a smaller program. We had chess, violin, futsal, drama, karate, yoga, clay, Legos, magic, book writing, knitting, TED Talks, and videography, among others. Andy McDonough from Orleans Police Department taught a ball skills class. Alan Harrison from the rec department brought programming in. Our school custodian ran a February school vacation week basketball clinic. And those classes really helped kids forge new interests. My daughter did a violin class in kindergarten and is still playing, and also lasting relationships. So the person who taught my boys skateboarding when they were in first grade went on to be their 6th grade basketball coach. So enrichment was affordable and convenient for families. And again, the classes really did the job of building community. But despite all those good efforts and great interest, the parent-teacher committee continues to really struggle to keep the program going because the elementary school isn't built for it. They don't have the room for it. And so each year, even as demand and interest and enthusiasm increases, the class load that we're able to offer shrinks. So I imagine that a community center could host these sorts of classes and clinics, but make them even better, expanding access to teaching and learning for all ages. The sorts of classes I listed could easily be offered to middle schoolers, after-schooler weekends, to adults and older persons. We could have multi-generational classes, a photography course bringing together teens and adults, a woodworking shop where older people could teach younger, art, open gym opportunities for all. And I really imagine a bustling community center with adults in and out all day and kids walking over after school. You know, when we don't have anything like that. And it's, you know, it's, I don't think we can even begin to comprehend what a difference that would make to the families in this town, young and old. And there's just so much we can do. So for years, I've seen great ideas like open gym and enrichment classes shelved, not for lack of interest or funding or staffing, but just lack of space. So I'd really like us to think about what we could do if space was no longer an issue. And then I would encourage everyone here to share ideas. Your idea might inspire someone else to share an idea. And we really want the discussion to involve everyone in town so that what we end up with is really a community center for everyone. So thank you very much, and I will pass things off to Kyle.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks everyone else on the panel and in the audience for listening and joining us today. I think Tracy really summed it up pretty well. Myself, I'm vice chair with the Recreation Advisory Committee with Tracy. I'm also involved with NASA Together We Can, which does, as Maxine mentioned, run after school program for middle schoolers out of the old Firehouse. We also are in charge of kind of management of skate park, Finch Skate Park, excuse me. And I would have to say Erica O'Reilly with our organization has really done a huge job in improving that area. All those projects were kind of born out of her ideas and her leadership. And if you just drive by there at any time, it's really bustling and busy. And I think it kind of just goes to show, you know, if you build it, they will come kind of mentality that there is a need for outdoor recreation space, indoor recreation space, community space, all these things that I think that a community center could be. There's a need for it. There's a desire for it. But what we really need from this is to kind of figure out exactly how to do it the best way possible and listen to all the voices. As Tracy mentioned, the Recreation Advisory Committee did a survey. We received over 300 responses back in January of last year. And it was a great mix of, I think, ages. We had, you know, pretty much half and half between people that were identifying as seniors or older persons, as well as then adults or people with children. And as Tracy also mentioned, the community center was really kind of the top two priorities identified as something that people would like to see accomplished in town, or at least, you know, something for the committee to strive to go after. We put together a citizens petition, and I think we gained just over 100 excuse me, in just 48 hours before submitting that for the spring town meeting that was obviously continued to October. You know, I think this is an opportunity, this feasibility study. Everyone, I think, has, you know, this idea that it's just, you know, shelling out money to answer questions that we should already know. And I really think that we don't know exactly what we could have our community center be without actually asking these questions, talking about it, and hearing from all the, you know, the people. I am a young family. I'm the head of a father of 3 young children. I have my perspective, which I see as being, you know, young families needing support and children needing support. But I do recognize that there's a lot of other members of our community that I think need to be heard from. And, you know, talking with Judy Wilson, the few brief times that I've had, I know that the Council on Aging does a number of programs at their facility, and that they tend to sometimes run out of space, and there's not a lot of other places to go. Joanna Keeley, who with the old Firehouse, has a number of organizations that run programmings out of there. The after school program from NASA Together We Can is there. There are these organizations that are looking to host host events and do things that just I think are having a difficult time with finding that appropriate space, and creating a kind of a central hub, as Carolyn has described for us in Harwich for Orleans, in which we really truly build a community by all being in the same area and mingling, and which is something we don't really have available on hand readily. So I think, doing a feasibility study of this type would help answer a lot of questions as to why and what do we need, and who would it serve, and how can we, make it sustainable? These are important questions that I think need to be answered before taking any additional steps moving forward with the project. And if we don't have these conversations now, I don't think we'll miss opportunities. We see, various properties throughout town coming up for sale or being talked about being acquired, and they have some uses, but if we don't talk about a space for our community to really build, we're going to miss out on those opportunities. Also being a part of the rec committee, we've kind of begun to realize that there is a strong desire to build the programming out of the recreation department. But the difficulty there is there's not a lot of space for the recreation department to start beginning hosting different programs. And I'm not talking just physically active programs, but things like arts and crafts, or just places where people can come together, be a community, share time and space with each other. And it just really is, it's a difficult process at this point, I think, for the recreation department to kind of build and expand, or for maybe, I don't want to speak for Judy and the COA, but for other programs to kind of be developed and grow without a centralized space where we can all be. What I hope to do with this forum and is hear from everybody, hear the concerns, hear the ideas, hear the support for the idea, and then bring it back to the Board of Select and see if they can get it onto the town meeting for another feasibility question to be asked and answered by the town, so we can hopefully start to get this project to be something that we can realize at some time in the future. I would also think that it would be important to ask the Board of Select to put a community center onto the capital plan. It could make the feasibility of getting the site completed much more easily, but I think it also is listening to the townspeople saying that they want this, that they think that there's a need for it, and by putting it into the capital plan, we can certainly make it a priority of some sort. And so I hope to learn from this forum. I hope to help see what the problems are, what the successes can be, and move from there, and hopefully we can gather that input. I thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you all. Everyone was really trying to stay within the 10 minutes. I had so much to say, but did a great job. I have some questions that people sent in earlier, or actually just now, that I would like to throw out to you. And before I ask people to raise hands electronically with questions. The first one is to Kevin. Orleans is in the midst of installing sewers downtown. You knew that, though. A very big project. With this expense, how can we afford to be thinking of anything else?
Well, I would actually, I answered the question directly, but I would turn the question around to say, by investing in infrastructure, aren't we now at a perfect opportunity to be thinking about building upon that? In the form of, we've talked about affordable housing and other forums, but this is a perfect time to be planning. And again, as Kyle mentioned, there is an orderly process of feasibility to capital planning that we would undertake in a way that we're not overburdening ourselves. We all pay the taxes. I know what the bills are as well as all of you, and I don't like them to go up. But at the same time, if we do this in an organized, orderly way, I think it's all achievable. I think we've heard some good results just in terms of the support that we laid out in the, you might folks remember the Alan McLennan pie chart, if you remember when we were promoting the funding of the sewer projects that are earlier Orleans Citizens Forum, where there was money coming to support sewers, certainly from the betterments. Those properties that do see sewers in front of them will be bettered to a certain dollar value allocated to them from what that investment is on the pipes going by them. But then there are other parts of money that will actually reduce significantly the impact on the taxpayers in the form of the hotel motel short-term rental tax that we dedicated by town meeting vote a couple of years ago, specifically to a wastewater stabilization fund. That means that it's parked, it goes there, and it can be used to cover the cost of the sewer. We also know the success moving forward with the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. Those funds through the Airbnb and related rentals are building up as the legislature and a lot of hardworking folks put the effort to develop that bill. And that's going to actually be a significant subsidy. We also are operating right now through the construction phase with 0% state loans through the construction that will then go to permanent financing. So I think the assumptions made to date relative to sewer and minimizing the burden on our taxpayers are beginning to prove themselves as valid assumptions. So I think we'll see some more numbers as we get closer to final completion. Things will come together. As soon as this time next year, we should start to see the final installed costs of the downtown sewer system, the new wastewater treatment plant. I physically was just out last week. It is going along beautifully. The construction process has gone really well. Knock on wood, fingers crossed, Mother Nature will cooperate. We won't have any blizzards and the crews can keep going. But I'm very confident, as I said at my opening remarks, this is a really exciting time for our town, folks. We really can do this. We can do affordable housing, but we just do it in a planned and orderly way.
Thank you, Kevin. A question has come in for Carolyn. Carey, how large is the site where the Harwich Community Center is located, including parking? And does the 32,000 square feet number cited include the basement? And the third part of the question is, what don't you have that you wish you did?
So the community center parking lot has 160 parking spaces. The front of the building has 20. The Council on Aging side has 64. The recreation side has 76. There are 3 handicap spaces on each side and 2 in the front of the building. And we have an additional dirt lot just adjacent to the back field of the center that is not a lined parking lot, but we certainly use that. So if I had to guess, we're up over the 200 mark in parking. The original square footage for the lot that we had, I can look that up. I don't know it off the top of my head, and please don't tell anyone I didn't. So that was the second question. What do we have that, what don't I have? Oh, excellent question. I think that when we opened the building, it was just the Council on Aging, the Youth and Rec, and Channel 18 and myself here. And then we added, so I think some of the things that we don't have is, I would love additional storage space. I would love additional smaller office space for whether they were tutoring, but there's a few things. In no way am I saying that we're perfect. It's ever evolving. So some of the things that we don't have is, we don't have a pool, which was in the original plan. So I think that I would have to say additional space. I don't think you ever have enough space. I think that we could do more programming. We get creative with how we do program, and the community works well, but we could always use it. If I had another space, the basement is unfinished, and at some point we hope it will be finished, and we would make that more of the workout area and some classrooms for aerobics and Zumba and things like that. So I think I would say more space. Sorry, I'm so long-winded.
Another question that came in is, I'm supportive of the idea of the community center. Those two words are the key. How do the panelists challenge the notion that we have a lot of spaces in schools and senior center, community room at the new police department, library spaces, etc., that could be coordinated so that the articulated needs could be accommodated in existing resources? To me, this is the key to overcoming resistance to the community centers concept. So I would, and added to that, yeah, Kyle.
Well, I don't mean to turn it back to you, Maxine, but I think if you could help maybe explain some of the difficulties with using the school spaces, just in
Sure.
general, would help to frame that question, because I do think that it does have a lot of merit in the sense that there are spaces that could be coordinated. I think what it really probably comes down to is access and when and the times at which those things can be accessed. But if you could help explain the middle school struggles with the space, that'd be helpful.
Sure. Taking off my moderator hat for a minute. And this actually question has come up a few times. Please explain the challenges with using the middle school auditorium, classrooms, and gym after hours. In terms of the schools, there are a couple of major problems. One is when they can be used. Ever since there started to be problems in schools around the country, and we have needed to lock down facilities, and I say we as the former principal, and make sure that we were careful of who came in and when they came in, and careful to keep kids in that situation separated from people coming in, we've had to curtail when it could be used by other people. So for instance, early morning programs had to be even earlier than they had been because kids would come in by 7:30. And it's very hard for the senior citizens who use the spot to come in much earlier than that, especially in winter when it was still dark. So while we wanted to accommodate people as much as possible, we also had to be very careful about keeping the kids, quote, protected, not from the senior citizens, but from the world at large. We were really needing to keep things locked more than we ever had before, and more than we really wanted to, but needed to. After school, it's surprising how much the building is used, and weekends. I mean, our gyms have been open to basketball and other sports all the time. Weekend use is constant, was constant. And even the cafeteria, we had the farmer's market in. The auditorium was available when it wasn't being used by the middle school. Other than that, we'd love it to be used. It couldn't be used too much in the summer because it wasn't air conditioned and people didn't, it got very hot. So the issue of coordinating it could be difficult because of some of the restrictions we had to put on and because we had to put the needs of the kids first. So if they were having a recital, if they were having a play, obviously that would come first. We welcome people coming in other times and using the facility, the gym, the auditorium in particular. The gym, problem with using the gyms after hours was our sports teams. We were fighting internally over, does volleyball use it or does basketball use it? Or, I mean, we had trouble with not enough space, especially when things had to go indoors. So it wasn't a lack of wanting to share it. We had 600 kids, we had 30 after-school clubs going on, and we didn't always have available space. And we tried to accommodate as much as we could, but that was one of the problems. Anyone want to speak to, like Judy, other facilities or Joanna being used, which was part of the question that was raised?
I can just make a few comments. I was one of those people in that early
Right.
class, and we miss it terribly, and we would get up at 5 if we could have it again. So we did have to get up at 5:30.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Yeah, I like the concept of using resources that we already have. We seem to have a sprinkling of them, and I have a few numbers from the old Firehouse, which compared to Carolyn is going to make it look like we're in one of her back rooms. But the old Firehouse has been serving Orleans since the 40s, when it was a police station and a fire station. And there are a few people still around who remember going there with their parents to get fire permits and fishing licenses. So in 2013, a group of people got together, the Orleans Community Partnership and numerous nonprofits and businesses, to see what we could do about the old Firehouse. And in the last 3 years, I've worked as a volunteer coordinator, and we have built the participation, or I would say the use of the public space, because there is no real public space for people to have a simple meeting or a class. So as of March, when we had to close the building, we had, well, of course, the chamber uses a part of that building, so they pay rent. There are public bathrooms. The town takes care of that, and they do a fabulous job. We have partnered with NOSIT Together We Can, so we could stay open, and they have their own special drop-in center. It's a fabulous place where the students can come from school, walk over, and there are snacks and 2 teachers, and they have different programs. And then the rest of the space is what I've been working with through the Cultural District and the Community Partnership. So as of March, very small numbers compared to Carolyn's, but we had over 41 diverse groups coming through that building and using it. We had an average of 114 people per week. And in essence, and that's not including the after school program, that's not including special events, partnerships with the middle school in terms of art exhibits, supporting local artists. We had arts programs going on. We had a already in place pre-COVID to have free Saturday workshops from different artists in the town, Coastal Craft Gallery, 10 weeks of free Saturday mornings with the arts. So we were attempting to fill a number of needs, unmet needs in the town. We did this by word of mouth, though never got to the point came in. And I want to speak to Carolyn's comment about a sense of loss. We had a wide, diverse number of groups from service dog training, which was Wednesday nights. We had the Homeless Prevention Council on Sunday for a public space that was private. And so when everything closed, an example is the meditation class didn't want to stop. So all of the people join virtually now. So there's a little bit of the programming that is still going on. I think it serves a really important role on Main Street with people coming and going, supports the local businesses. You can walk there from every major group, not quite from the senior center, but I think we need a path through the woods to connect us. But so I think that it filled a need, and in the study that was the impetus for the formation of the task force for the old Firehouse was the fact that, you know, we had 7-day programming, and this was all free or by a very small donation. So if you couldn't afford to take a yoga class somewhere, you could come to the old Firehouse and have your choice of teachers.
So Joanna, what I'm hearing you say is the Firehouse is being used extensively now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not as though there's lots of space left for more as it is now.
No, but
But it's very well used and very important to continue to be used.
definitely,
Yeah.
and that's why we want to move forward with some renovations that will add some of those amenities, like a kitchen that you could have small groups could be catered. You could fill that niche of smaller groups, personal,
Sure.
family sort of connection. That's how I felt about it. So I can relate to Carolyn when we had to close. It was a loss.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And to move a question,
Maxine,
again, for the senior center.
yeah, Maxine, can I address that from the Council on Aging?
Yes, I was just going to go to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so, you know, the problem really for us, we have been asked about using other space, but the problem is that a lot of things need COA resources to support. So to kind of host off-site programs is really challenging.
Mhm.
You know, fitness programs, we're either collecting money, we're paying the instructor, we have emergency protocol. So to have things off-site where they can't be supervised when we have limited staff resources makes it a little bit challenging. We are at the point in the year 2019, we had 19,907 programs and activities. That's separate programs, activities, and events. We served 1,333 older adults from the community of Orleans. So that's about, it's more than 35–40% of the number of seniors in town are being served by what we do. So we have had points where we are bursting at the seams. I'm not sure, our board hasn't really discussed what the options are. Things have been different this year. We only had 2 months of really in-person activities, but even this year we've managed to interact with 993 Orleans citizens. So that's even during COVID times and safety protocols in place. We still have managed to interact with a number of different seniors. So the problem for us is that we are using spaces that weren't designed to do what they do. We make it work. Our meeting room is divisible by 3, and I know Carolyn has a room similar. We use that for fitness classes. We use that for, big events. The problem is it wasn't designed, so you may not have a visual of the instructor if you're at the far end of the room. But it's working. But the problem is it's juggling, and we're always getting requests to do things, and we got to a point where by the time you're having 3 events at the same time, you're running a supportive daycare program for people with Alzheimer's and dementia, there's no place else to go. I mean, we converted a computer resource room to staff offices. We have made improvements to the building. And so I think we're using every square inch that we can use to the maximum potential we can use it. But hosting off-site programs presents real challenges for us. And I don't have a position on behalf of the Council on Aging, but I've seen what has happened in other communities when the conversation for a community center happened and the Council on Aging wasn't part of the conversation. And I think our closest neighbor that's happened to is Chatham. And they had a Council on Aging building and they developed a community center. And now the Council on Aging has outgrown its spot and they have structural deficiencies in the building, and being able to do something is hitting real hurdles in the community. So I'm a real proponent that if you are going to plan and that, you know, we really need to be looking at the community as a whole here. You know, we have 55% of this community is over 60. So I think I'm a proponent of intergenerational programming, and I just think that no matter what happens, the planning needs to be done where we're looking at all of the community's needs, that becomes a consideration, because we don't want to be in a community where it's us and them.
Right.
We want to be in a community where we think inclusively of we. And so that's part of why I just am kind of paying attention to the discussion and think it's important for it to be a broad-based conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. And with that, I have to go back to Carolyn. There are a couple of questions here that really are being asked of you. But one is, how do you finance? I mean, one of the things that Judy talked about was the difficulty of having another site where there are problems with staffing in terms of being in two places at one time, to say nothing of the issues of people with certain needs. How do you deal with that in Harwich?
Sure. Well, that's one of the great things about being in the community center. The Youth and Recreation Department is located here, so they're utilizing the gym. The Council on Aging is in this building, and they're also sharing the gym at different times, or our multi-purpose room. So the on-site thing, I certainly understand what Judy was saying, is definitely a challenge because you're trying to divide your resources. So I just want to answer also, the community center was built on approximately 17 acres. Sorry, I hated not knowing the answer.
Oh.
And there are 3 fields in the back of our building as well. But the community center is a town department. So as I said, I am responsible for the heat, light, electricity, the phones, everything that happens for the 5 departments that I mentioned earlier. But it is part of the town, the taxpayers. We do have a revolving fund, which pays for some programs. We have a revolving fund that pays for our weight room. So the members can join. They can do monthly, daily, weekly, or yearly. It's at a very reduced rate, but that money pays specifically for the weight room. It also pays for the attendant that staffs that room.
Okay. And a related question here
I'm sorry.
is, can you talk about how the community center pays for itself?
Oh.
What costs do residents bear? And yeah, I mean, that really is. Oh, and the other comment here is, Lee did come to speak to Orleans about the community center years ago in a program at Snow Library, and he was a beloved Harwich resident.
He was. I was actually at that program at Snow's Library. It was a pleasure to be there.
But, yeah,
So
that's
as I
really-
said,
No, go on.
the community center is one of the town departments, so taxpayers do pay. Their taxes are divided. I don't know, Kevin might be able to speak. I don't know if you have this in Orleans, so I'll apologize. But if you go on to the town of Harwich's website, we do have something that shows you where each of your tax dollar goes. I know that you can look up and say 17% goes to all of the departments, some goes to wastewater. So I don't know if you have that. I know that was a big push from our selectmen. Our building is paid off. We're 21 years old, so 21 years young, sorry. So the building has been paid off, so it really is just the departmental budget. I think I mentioned before that the Council on Aging has its own staff and they do have their own budget. The Youth and Recreation has its own staff. My staff is made up of myself. I have 1 full-time administrative assistant and a 19-hour-a-week employee. And that was certainly at the height of when we were open. We rely heavily on scheduling and programming and planning with the other 2 departments. But that's the staff that we have, so it's not a huge staffing. In the town of Harwich, our custodial staff, we do have 3 over here. at different times, not 3 at a time. But we were open from pre-COVID now, so I apologize. But we were open from 6 in the morning until 9 or 10 at night. So we were changing over our rooms 3 to 5 times to get the maximum use. And people who utilize the room other than town departments were paying to use the room. So that money went directly into the general fund.
Mhm.
So I hope I answered it, but if not, please let me know.
No, thank you. Well, another related question though is, or can you describe the difference between the sense of community built by the Harwich Community Center and the sense of community that we have here in Orleans using available space in 5 different locations to do the same thing?
That's a hard question to
I don't
answer
think-
because
Yeah,
I'm not in Orleans, and you have a
Right.
beautiful community. I have been fortunate to know certainly people who have worked there. And I think that just showing how many people are here and asking the questions shows what a wonderful community you do have. I will say that the community center here in Harwich, I tell you honestly, we lost by 10 votes the first time. I mean, we won by 10 votes. We lost by, I think, 79 the first time, but winning by 10 votes and seeing what it has become. I tell people this story all the time, that I'm probably not the best person to have on this call because I believe in the community center and what it does. What you want to do is ask one of the people who voted no, who now use it on a very regular basis. I'll tell another quick story about the sense of community. There was a gentleman who worked out in the weight room on a very regular basis, and he came in and he was looking a little upset. So I said, "Is everything okay?" And he burst into tears and he said that he had just learned that he had cancer and he had nowhere to go. This was his family. This was his home. He does have family. They were out of state, but he felt like this was the opportunity and place that he knew he could get what he needed. And honestly, he is doing well. And but he was a member of our older adults and had been at our breakfasts and using the building. So it felt like his home. So that's the sense of community that you build. It's about the kids who we've done a Halloween program for years. And one year the sponsor who donated all the candy was not able to do it. So we reached out to our community and we asked, and I will tell you that I will never forget that 2 younger girls who were in college, younger women, walked in the door. I can still tell you what kind of candy they brought me in, and they said, "We wanted to donate this because it was so important when we were young to have this party." So we're making those memories. People are coming back and they're volunteering. And I know that you probably have that. Certainly you have amazing people working in your community, but this is one-stop shopping where they can find out if they can have lunch, and then they can go play volleyball, or they can go into a sewing class, or they can be picking up their kids after school. So it is a sense of community, and it really has been a privilege to work here.
thank you. One thing that has come up in other conversations is that can there be a community center that has arms reaching out to other places that they're still part of the community center, or they're collaborating together, they're seen as highly coordinated, even though they have some different physical spaces. And I think Carolyn at one point said that when they run out of space, they go to the arts building and use.
Correct.
So
We
that-
had a building that was when we joined with Monomoy and Chatham. Our middle school had not been used, so we turned it into a cultural center, and we still utilize, our recreation department utilizes their gym on a very regular basis because our gym over here can be full at times with recreation programs. So yes, I believe that it certainly can, but I think that's the wonderful thing about a community center, is that it is exactly what your community needs it to be.
Okay, one comment, and there are other things related to that, but I want to get to awesome conversation tonight. let's make this year be the year of energy for the community center doesn't lose. Let's make this year be the year that the energy for a community center doesn't lose steam. Love to see a formal committee cooked up with representatives from rec, schools, council on aging, agriculture, library, cultural council, etc. The school committees have discussed many of these student family needs talked about tonight, but the schools are unable to make much of a dent in the overwhelming amount of need. Perhaps a question for Kevin. How do we move this forward from here? I'm ready to roll up my sleeves.
Well, and I know this individual, and I really thank him for that, because I think what we've heard tonight is really what we didn't have going into our event at Nauset Beach. We didn't have the clarity, the inclusiveness, the desire that we're all expressing in an organized way. So I think rolling up the sleeves, yes, we'll do it. I think further, when we do put together, and I would think the select board, again, with the support of Tracy, Kyle, all the input we've received so far, we need to clearly describe in the warrant article what we intend to do. I think that's what was missing when we worked off a citizen petition. But I think if we work this together, and as the commenter did say, bring all these groups together so we describe that warrant article clearly, what its purpose is, and also be ready to answer the questions of what it's not going to do. You know, it's not going to spend capital dollars. It's going to bring people together. It's going to ask many of the questions that teed up today. And I do hope with Zoom, Maxine, we can save everything that's been asked here, because this is incredible content for us to build forward on. So to that questioner, I'm ready to work with you, and I think a lot of people are. So the sleeves will get rolled up.
Thank you. And here's one for Kevin, and I'm sure Judy might want to speak to this too. I have heard that the Council of Aging is threatened by sea level rise. Is that true?
Well, Judy, I'll take this first, only because of being involved in the coastal resiliency efforts through the Cape Cod Commission and planning. And at some point, I don't know if it'll be my lifetime, but certainly that youngster Kyle that you were patting his or her back on is really going to be seeing changes in our coastal environment, to the point that I think now we do need to think about when Rock Harbor Road is not providing the access to that facility that we enjoy today. And here's just another thought. In the feasibility and designs, you know, we might want to ask, what is the expected remaining life of our current senior center COA, just from a planning purpose? They may say data is showing it's 10, 15 years, but even that data is valuable from a standpoint. If we consider other sites, we might, as Carolyn's able to enjoy both rec and all our other activities with COA, we might plan for a future space tied on to a rec center. Don't build it now, but actually carve out an area on the plans that would say, when the COA is ready to come and join this building, it's laid out there in such a way that it could be done. So these are all things that are really great to consider. The media, whoever's covering this, don't say it's going to happen next week. It's not. But we also know that certain major storms make that center inaccessible, right, Judy?
So a couple of years ago, we did have some flooding that made our building inaccessible. I do know, I don't know, like Kevin, about some of the environmental issues, but I do know that one of the things that we really need here is a generator. And regrettably, we had a free generator, but we couldn't put it on the site because we are in the flood zone. And so we couldn't find a location that was near enough our mechanics to place the generator. So we lose, a lot of times we lose our telephone on windy days. Sometimes our internet is a little spotty on windy days, but we can't get a generator here because of the site. The only place we can put the generator is not next to the building, which is up in the hill.
Jeez. There is a person with hand raised who I would like to call on, and she can ask the question herself. It's Erica O'Reilly. And we will unmute you. Hold on. Okay. Erica?
Can you hear me?
Can you, now we can.
Oh, okay. So thanks. And I think again, my name is Erica O'Reilly and I work with Kyle at NASA Together We Can, and I've worked extensively on the Finch Park rebuilds. And one of the things that I've seen through that experience is I think that a group that we haven't touched on tonight that's a bit underserved in our community is teens and young adults. And I think what we've seen through that build is how popular that facility has been, but not everybody is going to skate. I know when Joanna talked about how we use the old Firehouse for the after school program, we actually have quite a number of alumna from that program who have graduated middle school and gone on to Nauset High School, and they want to come back some afternoons. Additionally, we've run monthly paint nights at the old Firehouse, and to the point that, and Kyle, you've been there, they're at capacity, if not, squeezed in. So it's just another reminder that that is a population we have that could be better served through this community center. I think that's important.
Thank you. There are two questions I'm going to kind of put together. One is how does, and this has been answered to some degree, because Judy, I think you spoke to the issues with the idea of having some programming at the community center or at another site besides the Council on Aging. How does the senior center see the value of enhancing their programming in the community center? So is there any positive value in that? And could you, the other part of that, no, and I guess then it would go to Carolyn. Could you talk about the value, if any, of intergenerational mingling that occurs in your community center? So I see those as related. Although obviously intergenerational pieces can go on right in the center. But Judy, did you want to comment on that at all?
Well, there are social benefits. The intergenerational concept is something that is socially beneficial. Like I said, it kind of takes away that whole argument of us versus them. We're always looking at the, do the schools get money? And it becomes this thing where we're all kind of fighting for the same resources. So there's that issue. I took a sabbatical year at Harwich and worked at the Harwich Community Center, the Council on Aging for a year. That's what I'm calling it anyways. One of the benefits is that with the flexibility of space, if the rooms over by the Council on Aging were already being used, if there were rooms available other places in the building, you can continue to program and not be kind of limited by space. And so that was beneficial. And then there were times that Rec probably felt the same way when they had programs at times when the COA wasn't using the building. So I think there are just kind of some logistical benefits to sharing space. I don't know whether the town, I have to be very clear. I'm not speaking for the Council on Aging Board, and I'm not speaking, I'm speaking merely as an administrator and how I think about these issues administratively. But, if you're paying, there are limited financial resources in the town, and you want the most people to benefit from it. And if you're going to be paying capital expenses and utilities, there is some economic sense to limiting those costs as well, and letting the most people benefit from it. So there's that. I know there are people that are going to come down kind of on the other side of that, but I think that I don't know. I have raised my family here on the Lower Cape, and I have to say taking my COA hat off and speaking as a parent, it is, there are times when there is no place for the kids to go. And so, having a place that, my mother lives in Harwich, my mother values the community center the same way as her grandchildren value the community center. And there's just social benefit to that.
Mhm. Which gets also to the intergenerational question that was asked of Carolyn.
Question. Okay, Carolyn.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you talk about the value, if any, of intergenerational mingling that occurs at your center? And then Kyle, go to you.
Sure. So some of them are programmed events that are specifically intergenerational just for that. The Girl Power comes to mind. It is a program where older adults pair with middle school students, and there's some mentoring on both sides, I will say. Whether it's on nutrition or they do different things, and I think personally, and Judy can probably speak to it, I watch it as they each get something out of it. And not only that, what I see them bring to the parent who picks them up, or in some cases, the loved one of the senior that picks them up, and I hear them talking as they're walking by the office. So I think there are some actual structured programs that are multi-generational, which happen quite a bit. We have computer classes, there's the Girl Power, there's a STEM class, there's a few of them, quite a few. But then I also think there are some really natural things that happen when you have a building that you're sharing space with. My office oversees, and you're all welcome to come as soon as COVID is over. I'd love to give you a tour. But my office oversees the game room, and I watch frequently as some older adults just start teaching some of that teenage that you were speaking of, that I do believe needs more programming and more space. But I watch them teach them pool, and then I will watch as the kids will turn on their watch or their phone and then start showing the older adults. And it's really just very natural. And then I see them coming back and saying, oh, is whichever person, did you see that man today? Is he coming in? So it's just they're building natural bonds. And we also do programming for other people that involve the multi-generation. So, and one of them is like we collect things for the veterans, and you see both sides coming together and working and packaging and putting things together. So I think there's some really wonderful things happen spontaneously that you just don't get if you're in separate buildings. But there are some programs too, and the whole component of it is exactly what you want to walk away with, that you are bringing people together and nurturing relationships and building a stronger bonded community.
Thank you.
And Judy is missed.
Oh,
Kyle, did you want to add something?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to make 2 points, I think. Going back to what Erica said about the need for, providing space for teens and middle schoolers and even younger. It's really important to note that the old Firehouse has been really great for the after school program that was running out there. The space, unfortunately, just is what the space is. It's finite, and we would, typically, average between 12 and 15 kids that would drop in through the program, and that was definitely maxed out in the space. We, could accommodate up to 20-25 at a time, but it was a sight to see a bunch of middle schoolers running around in the finite space that is the Firehouse. Our paint nights would frequently bring middle schoolers and high schoolers together to kind of either free paint or learn from an instructor. And, we would max out there again at 25 kids, on those occasions. And just to kind of, so there is a need for space, more space. But then to go from there to, we have all these other standalone spaces, room at the police station or at the COA or at the old Firehouse or at the library. I think what really this kind of shows is that we don't get that intermingling of the generations and of the community when we're spread out in this sense. You know, the library right now, I think, is the best community center idea we have in town. And unfortunately, we can't really have the younger folks and, you know, older users of the library really mingle because it's a library. People want to go there to have a little bit of quiet and get some work done. And what I really, you know, have heard tonight is, you know, from listening to some of the experts in this area, is that what Orleans seems to be missing is that ability for a central hub for the entire town to intermingle with each other and really, and that has benefited Harwich. It certainly would benefit, you know, the members of our town. I was talking with a friend today who's, you know, mentioned that, you know, did you know that tennis players tend to live the longest? And I was like, no, I didn't know that, but could you maybe tell me why? And she was telling me that, you know, the study looked at the fact that not only are you getting exercise, but you're getting a social component to your exercise. So I think that kind of just kind of rings home to me why a community center is so necessary, is that, you know, we not only will have a space to exercise and be active, but also that missing component of being very social and what that really brings to us in general. And I think that would be a really key piece for the town of Orleans to kind of add to its repertoire.
Thank you. We are really running out of time. I'm going to very quickly read one more question that came, and a couple we were not able to get to. I apologize for that, but over the past several years, the YMCA has been putting out feelers on the Lower Cape. They were looking for Harwich for a while, but I haven't heard anything more about that. However, if the YMCA were interested in Orleans, I have no doubt it would be very successful, especially because there's no availability of a pool between Willie's and the Mid-Cape, other than Chatham's private swim club. Has anyone had communication with them? And I see Kevin's hand.
Yeah, quickly, Maxine, and thanks for asking this one, because it does mean that we should circle back. I believe the director or president of the Cape Cod YMCA did visit both the lower Outer Cape select boards. I think it was all the way back in 2019. They also went to the Upper Cape because they really are expanding their service offerings. Now they're dedicated to building out in Falmouth right now, I hear, but we really should circle back. I made a note to reach out to, I think the woman's name is Stacy, and we'll circle the wagons, because the question really goes to whatever we think about, let's not duplicate. If the Y does say they're committed to come here, then we certainly want to work with that. But let's get that done. I'll reach out to them actually tonight, and I'm sure we'll hear back from them.
Thank you. And this is the comment. So as a teacher here in Orleans, a community center is so necessary for the youth in Orleans. They need a place, frankly, to go, stay out of trouble, and demonstrate positive contributions for Orleans. And I think on that note, we've really run out of time. And I just want to take half a minute to thank the panelists and the resource people for the work that you're doing for our town and for sharing your knowledge and thoughts with us tonight. I also want to thank all of you who tuned into either Zoom or Channel 18. But we hope that you're leaving tonight with an understanding that at this point, our goal is to ensure that the community has information needed to think about the possibilities of what a community center could look like and what it can mean for Orleans. We also hope that this is one of the early steps in a process that will continue to engage the entire community. So again, thank you, and please stay well.